You are tuned into the Theory of Conspiracy. This is part 2 of our COINTELPRO episode, now in progress. So now whenever you hear, well, maybe not so much now, but there was a time, I'd say, especially in the 90s or 70s, where some influential people were killed, where they'd say, the government did it. And it kind of would ring the question, why would the government even do these things? Is when has the government been in the business of killing celebrities? But you can kind of connect it to a COINTELPRO to see why they even would. So let's talk about obviously the John Lennon, right? John Lennon's a big one there. He was a big anti-war guy. Now, when he was killed, it was more in the 70s, so it was kind of after that period there. So I don't know if it would have even made sense to have killed him at that point. But there's interesting things with the killer there. Was that John? Let's see, Lennon's killer. Mark David Chapman, the infamous, whenever it's 3 names, it must be brainwash assassin, right? You've ever heard that, like the Lee Harvey Oswald? And
yeah, I heard that. So it just what it sounds like to me is that they did something really bad, and their mom's like calling them out, right? It's just like
right. call him out by his full name.
Yeah. Like,
David Chapman,
Lee Harvey Oswald, what are you doing over here?
Lee Harvey, if you don't eat all your macaroni, you're going straight to your room.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Could be that. Yeah, I mean,
I did hear that theory before, but it's just like, oh, you did something real naughty, you know?
Yeah. So Mark David Chapman, and there's can be a Lennon maybe episode, but he had the whole Catcher in the Rye book where they're like, what's up with Catcher in the Rye? And that was also linked to, I want to say, John Hinckley, who shot Reagan. He only got the 2 names because he didn't successfully kill him. Otherwise, it'd have been John something Hinckley.
He was only a little bit naughty with attempted murder. He would have been full on naughty if he actually came and went through with it, right? And then
he was only grounded for like an hour or 2, but you still got to go out with his friends. Like, you just got to come home straight after school, do the chores, then you can go out.
Right? No, you could watch TV, but you're not going out, Mister. So.
Yeah. So as far as that goes, they're just, some people who think he's a brainwashed assassin to kill Lennon because he was part of that CIA MK Ultra program. The other one was Jimi Hendrix, that they say Jimi Hendrix may have been killed by the government.
So I never heard this one before. So explain what the theory is and how they killed him, if you could.
Exactly. Yes, I had only heard about this kind of recently, and I was like, what? That's stupid, crazy. Stupid, crazy like a fox. So Jimmy had the theories like he passed or fell asleep, choked on his own vomit, that kind of stuff, right? Like, that happened. So apparently with Jimi Hendrix was black. His fan base was very much sort of white, because he was doing rock music. So, was big in Britain, big in America as the rock god, as he is. He's an awesome guitarist. He did want to use his celebrity, and this is some stuff I found out, to work with the Black Panther Party because he believed in what they were doing and was giving them some money behind the scenes. His own sort of camp did not want him to have affiliations with Black Panthers because they were sort of looked at as a militant group. They felt that could hurt his image. And they felt that they liked him because he was like an early crossover guy where his black identity didn't really matter. He was big with white people, being an awesome guitarist. So stick with that. You started.
Yeah, he was obviously good with black people. It was.
Yeah. So they're like, stay in your lane, Jimmy. White people like you. The black people would bring you down. But he was giving them money behind the scenes. But he was a big, he was a rock god. So they and sort of connected with the anti-war movement. And I guess some say that he allegedly wanted to use his influence to go more in that direction and say, hey, I'm going to partner up with these guys and use my sort of level to sort of talk about what's happening to the black people, because we haven't exactly seen that. We'd seen the peace and love Jimmy, the anti-war Jimmy, but we hadn't seen the I'm frustrated for what's happening to my black people in this country. So let me say something about it. So we hadn't seen that Jimmy yet, but this is the Jimmy that we were looking to see. So supposedly what had happened, and you could say the same thing, there's also the other conspiracy that he was going to walk away from his label and his label would have lost all that money. So he was killed before he can, so they can make the money off it. So this is
so they can own the rights entirely to his music.
Yeah, you hear the same thing about Tupac and that he was leaving death row and all that. So supposedly what had happened, and this is what I've sort of read from some of the reports here, was that when they found him, it didn't just look like he vomited on himself. It looked like he had been drowned in wine. So some allege that he didn't just vomit it, that he was drenched completely in wine. Some say that
they were like waterboarding him with wine.
He was waterboarded with wine, is what they're saying. Is that he was held down in the bed. Someone stuck the wine down him and basically wanted to look like he had sort of OD'd or choked on that, but killed him with wine. That there was so much on him, and that it was in his lungs, that it wasn't to an extent of that you would just vomit it off of it.
Yeah, you can't drown yourself as you're drinking wine. I mean, the second it goes down the wrong pipe, you're like,
yeah, you're right. So that's interesting. I mean, you can look it up. It seems like, I don't know if he was waterboarded, but I guess there was some reports of it that I had never heard of before, that there was just so much wine on it, and that there was actually wine found in his lungs that was sort of to an extreme, like would not have normally just happened. So they'll say that it was some mix of sleeping pills, and it could have well been that, but just there's some who think that and then they're like, we all know about the waterboarding and the techniques, but man, with wine, that seems like ahead of its time.
Yeah, that's insane, dude. So who's another one? Who's another person that you think that they did this, or what's on your list here?
Oh, I mean, you could connect it to all the big guys, man. Kurt Cobain. You can connect it to the Kurt Cobain.
Why do you think Kurt Cobain?
I'm not saying that. I necessarily. But,
okay, well, not you personally, but like, you have a story behind that one or whatever?
Yeah, well, there's been documentaries. I've seen them. They're kind of interesting. Where, oh man, Kurt Cobain's a whole big one. So there's some theories that Courtney Love, right?
I've heard that theory. I've heard
that I guess her dad. Her dad's kind of a weird guy, but he was a manager for the Grateful Dead. I guess, as we've talked about, I don't know if we've talked about on this show, there's some interesting connections, like the government, CIA, LSD, scientists that were peddling the LSD and civil rights groups there, where there's sort of this like connection there, where there's been sort of like agents who've infiltrated the music industry and have spread the LSD as a means of control or something like that. You sound like you're going to say something.
No, I've heard that.
Yeah.
But you're coming out. So you're saying that some of these doctors weren't this free love, like a Timothy Leary, right? Like a guy that like was an LSD like founder, right? And basically that he was a scientist. He made it. Like, you hear Timothy Leary. You hear, other guys that were really big in LSD. They would do the LSD experiments in San Francisco with the Grateful Dead and stuff like that. Are they saying that those guys were feds, or are they saying that they had connections to feds and that maybe splintered off into like a free love thing, or both? Maybe some were and some weren't. And
yeah, it's both. Like Timothy Leary specifically, there's ideas out there that he was in fact a CIA agent, and that he was working hand in hand with this, we have this sort of new synthesized drug, and we're going to sort of put you out there as this sort of character and infiltrate these, basically.
Yeah, like the motorcycle gangs, the motorcycle gangs, the Black Panthers, the hippie band, the jesters in California, the merry men, that were in San Francisco and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So do you think, okay, so with that, right? Because a lot of spiritual, I've been seeing a lot of like spiritual awakening, like, Instagram profiles and stuff like that, where it's just like always like, hey, be your best self and do this. And if you do that, and oh yeah, mushrooms and this and blah, blah, blah. And you're saying that comes from a place of trying to control?
I think it very much can. I mean, there's you see the tentacles really big into things, and then you may find out about it years later. You're like, that guy was getting money. Like even the Dalai Lama, like that's in the news that well, maybe not in the news right now, but that they have been getting money from the CIA. So then you wonder, Well, he's in the news because I guess he told a kid to suck his tongue, and now
I saw that. That was fucking creepy.
So people are like, yeah, doesn't surprise me that a CIA agent would tell a kid to suck his tongue because he's a CIA agent, and it's like CIA. So
he just sounds like a creep to me.
So it does, like, I don't know. I'm at the point where, like, I don't trust anybody, man. Like, I'll be showing things on the social media, like, check out this video, and I'm just like, fake. And it's like, what? It's just a little kid posing with his mom. Yeah, everything's fake on the internet. Everything's just manufactured, and I don't believe that was a cute, spontaneous moment. They had a freaking camera on the tripod. You're telling me this was just spontaneous? No, this was acting. This was way forced. I don't believe crap on the internet anymore. So yeah, I don't know. So it seems like, are people put in positions because they're the best person for the job, or because they're infiltrating because they were the best at the CIA Academy? I don't even know anymore, man.
So I don't even know anymore either. So it sounds to me like, yeah, maybe those, that is the instance, but I can only imagine, right? And this is just pure, just projecting my thoughts onto it, right? Is that, yeah, maybe some of these people were CIA, but maybe they just like threw it and they met these people, are just like, yeah, well, now I'm a double agent, you know what I mean? Or something like that can transpire as well. So the possibilities are endless with this. You know what I mean? If you really go down the rabbit hole, everybody's suspect, you know?
Yeah. And it's like, wait, what? I could keep my CIA pension and you're going to put me on the board of directors at Universal Records? Double pay? Hell yeah. Like, why wouldn't you? And I just got to do what you guys tell me. Like, I don't know. It just seems like, but Courtney Love's dad. So there's a lot with the Kurt Cobain that has to do with Courtney Love sort of being the person behind it, where that he was like a handler, I guess, and that at a young age she was going from country to, almost like he made her a prostitute, and she was sort of like going in Europe, banging dudes and banging rock bands, and introducing them to LSD, and came to the Seattle scene. Saw Kurt Cobain. It's a lot of like, how did she know he was going to be special? But maybe she was just banging everyone that inevitably, be in that circle of dick there somewhere. But what happened with the Kurt Cobain stuff, you should watch some Kurt Cobain documentaries, is that, and I remember being part of the MTV thing where they kept leaking all this stuff that Kurt Cobain is suicidal, and Kurt Cobain is at this rehab center, and Kurt Cobain left, and Kurt Cobain is suicidal. So, but allegedly these press releases were by Courtney Love to kind of put out in the ether that Kurt Cobain was so suicidal. And it wasn't so much that he was suicidal. He just was sick of her shit, and that he would go to rehab to escape her shit because it was too much shit. So when he went missing, because he was found like they had this, I don't know what to call it.
Like a compound, kind of like multiple house.
Yeah, it was like a back house where he was on the second floor. So when she was like, I don't know where Kurt is, so she hired a private investigator and kind of put him on this wild goose chase of all the places he could have gone, and kind of like he probably killed himself because he was very suicidal. So it was already out there where everyone's like, oh,
so right there, if I can put a pin in it for a second, right there, like, you don't check your whole property for the person. You know what I mean? Like, that this you have this back house, or you have this, you're not going to go upstairs. You're not going to check every room in the house or in the property.
Yeah. Right.
It's
especially if it's a place where he like it hangs out, if it's
right.
Yeah. So that stuff, eventually he was found there. And then I guess the suicide note is kind of suspect because the first part of it just kind of looks like a poem that Kurt Cobain would have wrote that wasn't suicidal. It was kind of Kurt Cobain art. But then there's a little section down below that like kind of turns that into the suicide note. People suspect that it's different handwriting, and that they're like, this is just Kurt Cobain lyrics with a little bit of suicide stuff added after the fact. And that they think that he was killed. And then the whole heroin, they say that it was so much heroin that it could have killed an elephant. And then the fact that he was able to then shoot himself with the shotgun, which would have been hard, especially on that much heroin. I guess the private investigator who was hired by her thinks that she did it because he thinks that she just hired him as sort of a ruse to just kind of like,
right.
Oh, I was so worried about my husband suiciding himself, but that she was already planning it within the media, within everyone else. And just the fact that she kind of knew how to do that stuff with that. She had that influence because I remember reading about that on MTV News. Like Kurt Cobain is sad, and Kurt Cobain did this. That she was very much the person that was feeding MTV that, and somehow had that, I guess, open communication line. Like, oh, Courtney Love is saying some stuff, and the reason for that is because Kurt Cobain was becoming that dangerous of becoming that sort of messiah type superstar where he had the whole generation that he could have. I don't know what he was doing with that because I wasn't a huge Kurt Cobain fan, so I don't know what he was trying to sort of weaponize everyone to do, but that he had that and he needed to be taken down.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask, like, what was his stance on, politically, but I don't remember him being too much of a political figure or anything like that. But
right, me neither to say like what he would have done with it. So but
that's a theory out there. That's what you're saying.
Theory out there, yeah, and it connects to all those things. The rabbit hole of conspiracies. I guess Tupac and Biggie would be the other big one. The deaths that sort of happened during that time there. What makes it sort of interesting is with these guys getting killed, like they got killed very publicly, but then there's not, it's like who killed the guy? I don't know. Like Tupac got killed on like the strip of Las Vegas. Biggie got killed after an awards party where everyone's getting out of track.
So you would kind of see what's happening, and you think you'd get a license plate or something like that, or at least a positive ID on who was doing it. I don't know. That's crazy.
Yeah, but I guess you find out later that these guys were being watched by the local police enforcement. So they were being watched. They would call them the hip hop police. That whenever Biggie was in town or Tupac was in town, that there was undercover agents taking photos of them. So then it's like, well, if you guys are watching these guys all the time, shouldn't you have saw what happened and intervened and things like that? But then, especially with the Tupac stuff that we kind of talked about already. He had direct connections to Black Panther Party. Yeah, so this was the godfather of Tupac. So Geronimo Pratt, he was
that's the godfather of Tupac?
Yeah, he was in the Black Panthers. He was in jail for a long time because of a suspicious murder that was linked to him, which also goes to COINTELPRO, where I guess they said he killed some people on a tennis court. And even though I think the wife was killed and the husband was a witness and was like, "Oh, it wasn't that guy, it was this guy." And they were like, "No, it's Geronimo Pratt, and we're gonna just lock him up." And so a lot of that, a lot of false confessions, false imprisonment, things like that. So he would talk about those things on the record, would give shout outs to people, but he had this connection to the Black Panther Party. And I feel like he would have been the guy that could have posed more so than Kurt Cobain. He was talking about all these different sort of like revolution type things and in a cool way. There's been rappers that talk about it like, this is making me think too much, I don't like this, but he had a way of like having a fun song and having a gangsta song and then having this is some education song, cool. So and he has a song for the ladies, so he had that nice mix that like
right where it's like it's something for everyone, so you're gonna get there's gonna be more draw to him. So the fourth song that's political, like, oh, that's a banger too, Yeah. So, okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me. I always thought, if you go to his last album, like, I'm if you remember being in 6th or 7th grade, we're going to date ourselves here, but the Machiavelli was telling that he's alive. And it was a great album. And also it's a great, The Prince is a great fucking philosophy book. If you actually get to the real, the Italian Machiavelli. Yeah, that kind of goes in tandem of what we're kind of saying, if you think about it, because like it's about the court, right? And like you don't want to suck up to the money, right? Like the king, right? Or whoever's in power, because everybody else in the court will be like, oh, look at this fucking brown-nosed piece of shit, right? But you also want to carry favor with the money and the king. And go and do what's best, for you. But it's very Machiavellian, is playing off of your strengths and weaknesses. But he warns that like if you go too far and the other way and kind of disown the king, then the king will kill you. You know what I mean? So very eerie that we're talking about Italian, early medieval Renaissance philosophy, and it's very parallel to what's actually happening with these people in the court, if you will, right? The rich, the elite, within that.
Right. And much like, it's like we talk about the COINTELPRO, keeping people wrapped up in the system, Tupac's whole career, he was wrapped up with court cases. He had an issue where he shot some undercover agents that were messing with him. He was accused of sodomy for allegedly, like, there was a weird thing where he was allegedly touched a girlfriend he had that alleged that he touched her butt at a party or committed sodomy, but he went to, was basically charged like as a rapist for sodomy, which you don't hear a lot about for sodomy charges, but unless it's like very, you know when you hear it.
Yeah.
But he was tied into a lot of stuff. He was in jail for, good duration too. He was shot. So there was a lot of, and even when he was shot, I guess he was shocked about it. He was just going to a New York studio and this created the whole Biggie thing. But I guess he was shocked because he felt like his people would never have done that to him. And he meant like black people in general, that he was too respected to ever be robbed, to be a victim of it. Unless it was the government. It was the COINTELPRO, it was the operatives infiltrating the gangs or something. Yeah. So the other thing that we can connect it to, I'd say, besides like the 90s conspiracy theories with artists being killed and supposedly it was government or the CIA or the FBI, would be after 9/11. After 9/11, 9/11 was obviously the terrorist attack.
Are you a truther? I personally kind of am. I really kind of don't know the extent of it, but there's a lot of, if you go down it, there are a lot of documents that show that, these people were kind of FBI agents and that they infiltrated these, terror cells, and then they're blamed for the terrorist acts. You know what I mean? Like as a proxy or like,
Yeah, that's exactly what I want to talk about. But as far as 9/11, yeah, there's weird stuff. Someone made a lot of money that day because they put out, what is it, put options or when they
were they short things?
Yeah, where they shorted. Yeah, so someone knew that the financial area was going to take a big hit that day and made a lot of money with that. So it was a lot of missing pieces with the money. The day before 9/11, Donald Rumsfeld, the Secretary of Defense, announced the United States government lost like $9 trillion. And then once 9/11 happened,
just disappeared. Like they
find it. And we're looking into it. And then it was just like, well, 9/11 happened. So how dare you ask any questions? So like that was convenient. There was the two towers fell, and then there was another building downtown that wasn't hit by anything that just kind of fell itself, and it housed it had like FBI offices, CIA offices, FEMA offices, a lot of like, okay,
we should have a whole episode on this, but how is this tied to what we're talking about?
Oh, well, specifically, I would say with the FBI. So after 9/11, right, Patriot Act and everything's being monitored and everyone's looking out to stop that. And we're going to war overseas and we're going to war with countries that we don't know what the connections are and we're not able to ask any questions.
How dare you ask why we're going to war?
How dare you, anti-American? Are you a patriot? Because right now
I eat freedom fries, not French fries, because the French aren't backing us up on our war in Afghanistan. They're pieces of shit.
Yeah. Sounds like you're against me, not with me. Because you're asking too many questions. You're slowing me down.
Damn right. So what? Yeah. So what happened?
So I would hear about all these. So with Mossad, or not Mossad, that's Israel. With Osama bin Laden.
Oh shit.
Osama bin Laden, Obama. There was. So you can go back in that history with Osama bin Laden, that the Taliban were created by the CIA and funded and given weapons so they can go against the Soviets. And now
they were. That's a fact.
They were, yeah. So we create our own boogeyman, right? But then how deep does that go? Are we creating our own enemies and things like that? A lot of weird, suspicious things. But I remember hearing about all these in New York, especially. There was a terrorist cell that was brought down. They were planning to bomb this new tower and blah, blah, blah. But the FBI was able to take them down. And yes, we're heroes and all that. So the war against terrorism is working. But then you find out, no, not so much. You find out that the person that was arrested was some college student that was sort of being recruited by these guys that were like, hey, we'll give you this money, do this thing, hang out with us, blah, 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 blah. But then you find out those guys weren't an actual real terrorist cell. They were the FBI that was pretending to be a terrorist cell. So they were, in essence, tricking you into thinking you were doing something that wasn't going to happen anyway, so that they can say, hey, we stopped this thing from happening, but really it wasn't happening unless you guys tried to make it happen.
Which we planted the seed and we recruited you to make it happen. So we were just trying to test and make sure that you wouldn't do something. That's kind of
right.
Entrapment, correct? But
yeah, it's like those stupid bike scams where someone leaves a bike unlocked and someone's like, you shouldn't leave a bike unlocked. I'm going to steal them, teach them a lesson. Then you're like, you got arrested for stealing a bike. It's like, well, that's not fair. I was trying to teach you a lesson. And it's like, well, so there wasn't really a bike to steal. So it's like this undercover sting operation that's like, caught you. But it's like, but you created this situation, man.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
So yeah, just this idea of, are they playing both sides? Are they so infiltrated that they are the alpha and the omega? Are they their own enemy?
So this goes back to what I think me and you have had this conversation multiple times, where like in any organization that big, there has to be conflicting subgroups within an organization, right? Yeah. So like I would even go as far as to say in the CIA, I would go as far as to say the FBI, I would say in the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, right? There's different people that make up those groups, and I'm sure that there are some that are good and some that are bad. And I'm sure that there's some that are just like, I'm here to get a fucking paycheck, and they're gray, right? So January 6th, and I will say that the constant with this, right, is January 6th, the main argument is that the far right perpetrated that, right? And the main argument on the left for the Black Lives Matters and the looting of the stores in our hometown, you know what I mean? They say, oh yeah, that they perpetrated that. The constant, and this is the point I'm trying to make, is that it's always the opposite side having, I guess it ties into what we're talking about today. The opposite side, there is a sleeper cell group that is perpetrating these acts to make the other group look bad on both sides of the argument, right? So the liberals will be like, we didn't do that. If you look, it's a white guy, looting, or you know what I mean? It's somebody with a face mask on, and he was a Proud Boy. On the other side, January 6th, it wasn't us, the Proud Boys. It was the Antifa. It's like no one's taking responsibility for that. Do you think, and this is the question I'm going to pose, do you think that could be true? Do you think that both these groups are trying to peacefully protest, and that the FBI is infiltrating and making it more violent and making it more, destructive to make both groups and to drive a wedge between the right and the left even further?
Yes, that's my point.
Okay.
Is that I think ultimately, like if you look at the 50s and 60s, you look at the Native American groups working hand in hand with Black civil rights groups, working hand in hand with Latino civil rights groups, working hand in hand with white people, anti-war groups, and what they could have done if they would have continued to work together, but instead we're taken down from the inside. I look at us currently and I say we're far away from where were in the 60s. I'd say we are more divided over everything. We're not unified on color lines. We're not unified on gender lines. We're not unified on political lines. We should be talking about, hey, I think it'd come down to color. It's green versus those who don't have it. But I think we're far apart. There's so many identities and sub-identities that we're fighting about and keeping us distracted from everything, that we're pissed off over dumb things at each other. We're not pissed off at the right people.
I'm thinking of like the parable where it's like you have like a guy come. There's a far right guy and a far left guy, sitting across from each other at the table. Then there's a suit right in the middle, and they go, "Hey, here's one for you, and you don't get anything, right? But this guy, there's like, let's say there's 10 cookies, right, on the fucking table, and this is really layman, but they give one side the cookie and they go, hey, look at that guy, he's got the fucking cookie, you should fight him, because and then the suit being the government, they have fucking 9 cookies, and they're like, but look at, he's got 1, and you got
he's
0.
Not sharing and
he's not sharing it with you, so you guys should fight each other. You know what I mean? I agree with that, dude. I think that there has been I always say this, there's 2 sides of the same, the government is 2 sides of the same coin, right? So ultimately, it's George Carlin said it best. They're in a big fucking club, and you're not part of it.
Yep.
You're not part of it. Like, and if you are even considering or arguing that, oh, it's the Republicans, oh, it's the Democrats, like, you're not in the club, man. Like, you're
playing into what they want you to play into.
Yeah, they want division.
Yeah.
I agree with that 100%.
Yeah. So that's why I question every single thing. That's why, like, a January 6th, like, I don't take when I watch it, I'm like, what do you want me to feel watching this news headline? Like, I see that it's a brainwash box. So I look at so I can see both sides, and I could definitely see how you can manipulate anything, even how do you feel that you
get chastised sometimes for bringing that up? Because, like, I feel it's unfair for someone like yourself, who I know,
like, there was never a bandwagon to say, hey, let's get behind the Black Panther Party. They got some cool ideas. But when you see every major corporation get on the Black Lives Matter, where you go to work, and you're like, we're supporting this and we're supporting that, and you're wondering, that never happens. Why is there this big push that we're all on the bandwagon? This is the agenda we're pushing. We're going into bed with these guys. It's suspicious to me because of my history with these guys, that they're suspicious people.
So, okay. So you're, I guess I'm trying to bring this all together when it comes to that. So you're saying because it got corporate support, it's suspect.
Yeah, I could say that. I mean, you want to vet it, right? You want to see what is this all about? What are you really all about? Because it would be great if they were being supported and being given all this money, and then you see that they're actually about creating something that's going to be self-sustaining in the community and bring up all minority people.
So one thing that I thought about is, like, de-escalation training for, like, police. Like, if I would say, and that's the thing today, man, like, all these subgroups that are just so divisive. It's just like, what about coming together, right? You raise money for Black Lives Matter, and all right, so hey, I know you don't want to give money to the police or whatever, but hey, why don't we just have de-escalation training for the police? So, what these guys are doing is atrocious. Like, I don't think you're going to even argue with that, or anyone can really argue with that. That being said, let's funnel funds, whether it be from the political side of it, from these nonprofit groups or whatever, to teach de-escalation problems. So like, in the future, be like, hey, yo, we paid for the department to have these de-escalation projects. Like, you should know better, right? Because I think a lot of the times, a lot of these police that get wrapped up in this, they do not have, and that's where a lot of people, I would say I lean more liberal, right? But a lot of people in that camp don't agree with me that, okay, these guys did a horrible thing, but what if they had training that taught them de-escalation instead of this, like, militant idea? And I think the answer to that is because the militarization of police doesn't allow that to happen, and maybe they're not going to even accept those funds. You know what I mean? What are your thoughts on that? Like, I mean, I know that's a divisive opinion, but I think a lot of police are, have good intentions. Not all, right? There's like I said, there's good and bad in every fucking organization. But what are your thoughts on that? On my ramblings there?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't really speak on the training as far as, like, are they getting de-escalation training now? Are they just skipping over that section as far as accepting or taking funds from outside organizations to further that training?
I don't know, man. We can cut that all out, because I don't think they would even take funds from Black Lives Matter, if I'm being real. But I don't know. Who knows? Yeah.
Who says no to money? I don't know.
That's true.
Yeah, so COINTELPRO, just as we've seen, there's been a program of infiltration and intimidation and even murder to take down these groups that sort of went against the narrative or went against the sort of vision for their country there. So it's scary at times. And where we're at more modern days, I mean, at this point, we're just kind of assuming until there's that next big leak. The next time, the protesters leave a note out saying, hey, don't lock the doors. Hey, leave the server room open, things like that. Do
you think that carries over into like the Mockingbird with the news and stuff like that?
Yes, for sure. And I originally this episode, I wanted to kind of just talk about these programs, and I thought I could just kind of rattle off some information about COINTELPRO and Mockingbird, but then it's like, no, it goes too deep. Yeah, I do definitely think that. I think
they're working in tandem, you think?
Yeah, I've seen several TikTok videos where they just put all these different news anchors side by side in these boxes of like 20 videos, and it shows, and it could be about anything. It could be about COVID, or it could be about any random thing, not just COVID or anything divisive about. I think the last one I saw was just about some sort of journalist having an independent, pushing their independent narrative.
Right.
Yeah. And they were all reading from a script that was the exact same thing, word for word, from all these affiliated stations. And you see that, it's not just like, if you think that your journalist is like interpreting the news and like, this is my take on it. It's like, no, you're reading a script and you're owned by.
So I will come out and say this, like, when I was a news producer for ABC in like an 85 market, we had the AP, right? And we had Fox News, and we were an ABC affiliate. So ultimately, like, you had to rewrite the news story, but whatever you got over the wire is what you were using for that day, unless it was like a local newscast. So yeah, like there are subgroups that, like, even for local independent stations, you're still getting your news source from these wires that are controlled by a huge conglomerate. Like, that's right. A fact. That's a fucking fact. Like, yeah. And some people are like, oh no, well, that can't be true. Mainly liberals at this point, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I would say the conservative narrative is like fake news. We can't trust it unless it's Fox or whatever. But ultimately, it's the same companies that are running both. It's just a different spin. You know what I mean? So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's this idea that I'd have to do a CIA episode later, is that the CIA ultimately, who they work for is protecting the interests of the big corporations. So if you look at the CIA and journalism and the corporations that own everything, you could see how everything is very easy to be unified. And I think with the TikTok or the digital sort of thing that's going to be passed, I think it's some interesting times, and we'll see how. Do you honestly think that I think the genie's out of the bottle. I think if they pass it, there's going to be upheaval. They're going to come back to it. It's going to shift. It doesn't really matter. The internet has let the genie out of the bottle. Like, that's why we can do this show right now. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I don't think are you in the camp that you think it's going to pass because of the control? I personally don't think it's going to pass. I've been wrong in the past, but I don't think it's going to pass. I think enough people have had enough, right or left. They're tired of not getting the actual narrative. That's what's actually going on. I think TikTok is a huge indicator of the times ahead, where free press is actually going to be free again, because these corporations can't control individual voices that are now being pushed out to hundreds of thousands of people,
Yeah, I think with Elon Musk taking over Twitter, I think even though you're hearing a lot of a lot of hate on there, and did you just see he had an interview with a BBC journalist, and he just treated him. We'll talk about that next. We'll talk about that next week. It was fun. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say. Everything moves so quick now, right? Just like the Patriot Act that happened in 9/11, that the information that was in there couldn't be passed before 9/11. But then after an event like 9/11, it easily passed because we all have to sort of get on the same board, and then, it was already written beforehand. So I feel like if you're powerful enough, and we see that there is this shadow government out there, they can manipulate events if they really, really want it. So as far as not passing the first time, they can create some sort of leak or something that creates some sort of attack or whatnot, that now, hey, if we would have done XYZ, ABC wouldn't have happened. But then what's the next step of that? Let's say we do pass it, but we're like, this is bullshit. We're not taking this. We have the free press now. We have the internet. What does that look like? What are the ramifications of that looks like? What are we headed for digital war? Is digital war going to create actual war based on information? Because information, it's money right now. That's what it's all about with this whole digital media world. So I don't know. So like, will there be wars just over our rights of getting information that we want and keeping our identities private, things like that? I don't know. So we could be in for some interesting times. Regardless,
I think so, man. I think we are already in them, if I'm being honest with you. So
yeah, exploding cows,
right.
Leaked intel.
Well, I thought you were gonna say leak farts, but yeah.
Leak fart, yeah, exploding fart gas. Yep. It has not been a dull day, I'll say that. And we could talk about. I feel like with the conspiracy stuff, right? You're like, we got to talk about the past, but I feel like this year we could probably just do modern conspiracies, because every day there's something with what's going on in the world. Sure. And you mentioned the Bud Light stuff. That's a thing right there. We can talk.
Oh, it's huge, man. It's massive, and I think, I think it's just all coming to the forefront. I think we needed to have a base of like where it came from. And that was like maybe the first wave of like awakening was like, hey man, because in the 50s is like, of course Uncle Sam has my best interests in mind, and then
the greatest country on earth.
Yeah, this is the greatest country on earth. Yeah, exactly.
Go to Cuba if you want to.
Yeah.
You want to, yeah.
Yeah, go to Cuba if you want to go to the casinos. And then they just like, oh, fuck it. We're going to build Las Vegas. You know what I mean? So fuck them. I think that's good, man. I think next week, am I driving the show?
Yeah, you come up with a topic and you can be the guy who drives I'll be your Miss Daisy.
Okay. Well, I'm driving here. I'm driving. So we'll
So what are your final thoughts about everything we discussed, COINTELPRO and all
so
this?
my final thoughts on this, because I did not know about this until today. You had mentioned that you're going to be talking about it. You gave me a brief synopsis. It's proven that this happened. The do not close this door, do not lock this door sign was ingenious. Something so simple worked so well. And that being said, why would they relinquish that form of control as the Federal Bureau of Investigation, or maybe it shifted to the CIA? Of course, they want that intelligence. Of course, they want that information. Of course, they want that control. So I'm sure it's called a different name by now, but I think it's, sowing a. I think it might be even bigger. I think they might be playing both sides against each other. Sides being relative. I don't really take and subscribe to the one side or the other, right? I always subscribe to the idea that it's a one big moving part and there's two sides of each coin, like I mentioned earlier. But yeah, I think for the people that do subscribe to that, it's definitely a psyop where they're saying, okay, they're infiltrating the right or the left, and then it's like, yeah, these guys are horrible, but like, look, you should do this, and then there's patsies on both sides. I would say that for Black Lives Matter. I would say that for the January 6th. I'm sure that there's some dirtbags on both sides, but I think it's being perpetuated by maybe another organization to like kind of have infighting so that the major form of control can still control the masses.
Do you agree?
Yep.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I feel like even if we didn't know that this happened, my gut would be saying this is probably happening, that they're playing both sides, they're infiltrating this and they're creating, and then people would be like, that's crazy. They're not having undercover people go and get leaders addicted to drugs and arrested for fake crimes and creating inner beef. And then you find out, wow, they are. This is some crazy. So yeah, I just don't subscribe to the whole like they were doing it then and they just treat us way better now. I just think they still do it and they just don't talk about it.
Well, I would say even more so. It's probably even more intense than it was,
Yeah. So how deep it goes, we can only find out maybe in another 50 years or so when they declassify everything and redact everything in it anyway. But
well, hopefully by that time they're not redacting anymore. They're just like, hey man, this is actually what happened. We fucked up. But that's what they're saying now. So I'm sure it'll be redacted then too. So
yeah. So I guess just question everything, man. See who benefits, man.
Yeah, man. Who's the one benefiting it from it, man? Yeah. But yeah, man, that's I think where we're both at. And I think the majority, I think that's the scary part is why they want to ban TikTok and stuff like that. I think a lot of people are waking up and figuring out that like, hey man, yeah, there are some programs that have your best interest in mind, but there are also major forms of control going on.
Yeah. I do see that. I see people who see the sort of structure in place and the dissension. I still see some people who are playing into the dissension and, you know, putting themselves in the box and compartmentalizing themselves. And so, but hopefully the latter wins there. And they're just like, yeah, nope, break the walls down, man. Break them down.
Bring them down, man. All right. Well, hey, this has been the Theory of Conspiracy. Follow us on Instagram. And until next time, Rolando, always good chatting with you. Yeah. Thank you for the information today.
You want to drop the handles on the pod here?
Yeah, it's at the theory _ conspiracy. The theory of conspiracy should find it, and we're on Instagram. So you can follow us there, and we will have updated memes and all that great shit on top of links to where you can listen to our podcast. If it's the first time you're listening, you can always count on them being updated in our Instagram for now, and we will have more to come from there. Make sure you follow the podcast. We really appreciate it if you do. And yeah, man, just no need to wear a tinfoil hat. Just be aware and follow the information and make your own decision.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm Ro.
And I am Mike. Yep. And we will talk to you
on the flip side.
All right, man. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.
All right. Take care.